and gentlemen, this evening I am delighted to welcome you all to our Black History Month webinar. Those of you who do not know me, my name is Enoch Kanagaraj. I'm the founder and the chief executive for One Vision, bringing people together, bringing communities together. I'm sure you all will agree with me today as we begin our Black History Month celebration, which is the people not like us are just people like us. Actually, when we cast our hands to people just not like us, we heal one of the fractures of our wounded society. During the Black History Month, I have visited a number of events were happening in Hertfordshire, that including one I visited, the last was the Hertfordshire Constabulary, who put together a wonderful event in Watford. I was amazed and thrilled to see many of our younger generations joining to learn about the history and heritage, which was very amazing. I never attended history lessons because it's quite boring for younger people. It is important to teach our future generation why we need to learn history. This evening, let me start this with a short experiment, actually. Have you been to Washington, D.C.? And have you seen the memorials? Absolutely fascinating. Here is Lincoln Memorial, beautiful. If you go to Jefferson Memorial, screeds of text. Martin Luther King Memorial, more than dozens of texts from his speeches. And you can stand there and read their history. I didn't realize in America, you read memorials. Now you come to the equivalent in Parliament Square in London, and you will see the monuments. When you see the monument of David Lloyd George, it contains 3 words, which is David Lloyd George. Nelson Mandela has 2 words, Nelson Mandela, and Churchill has only 1 word. Why is that difference? In America, immigration has been there for generations. But in Britain, immigrants, until recently, higher than ever before. That's why we all have to unite and celebrate this kind of event together. No matter what color, religion, race, creed we are, we're united and stronger together. And that is One Vision plans and visions are in Hertfordshire and beyond. We have lined up with excellent speakers and dignitaries joined here today evening. And I have to say, unfortunately, Gillian Joseph were not able to attend today's event. Sadly, her mother passed away a few days ago, which was a sudden death, and she was grieving her mom's death. Unfortunately, she cannot be in today with us. Let's all have our thoughts and prayers for her and her family this evening. So you might be excited to see who our compare and host for tonight is none other than my good friend, Miles Crawford. Many of you know Miles. He's a TV presenter, a well-known comedian, and he's doing excellent work during the COVID recovery. And yet to see him, a lot of work he's been doing in the world of comedy. Let us all put our hands together to welcome one and only Miles Crawford.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? You can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. Well, thank you, Enoch. Really good to see you again. And there's a few familiar faces on here as well. And by the end of it, we'll all know each other as well. So thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. And as many of you know, my name is Miles Crawford, and welcome to One Vision's Black History Month commemoration entitled "What Does It Mean to You?" We're delighted that you've all joined us for this significant event. We have a wonderful programme lined up for you, including inspiring music as well, alongside sensational speakers. And I'm delighted that we have with us tonight Madam Rita Tani Idi. I hope that's I've pronounced that correctly. The Deputy High Commissioner of Ghana. We've got Lionel Wallace, the Queen's High Sheriff of Hertfordshire. Dean Russell, the MP for Watford, and Peter Taylor, the elected Mayor of Watford as well. Councillor Asif Khan, welcome along. Claire Bars Gordon from the Watford and Three Rivers Trust. Chief Inspector Alexander Warwick. And that's not all. We've got Alison Odipo from the Kenyan High Commission. Paul Lee of the Royal Wedding Fame. Good to see you again, Paul. Great to see you in Watford singing live not so long ago. And of course, our noteworthy speakers as well, including Dr. Kevin Nkubi, all the way from South Africa. Off the back of that, I'm now delighted to present to you Madam Rita Tani Idi. I hope I got the pronunciation of that right. The Deputy High Commissioner for Ghana, who is a former teacher and government minister. What does Black History Month mean to you, Deputy Commissioner? And how do you celebrate it?
I think you're on mute. Sharon?
Madam, you're on mute. Madam, sorry to interrupt you. Madam? Madam? Madam, you're on mute.
How do I mute it? Huh?
Yeah.
Hello.
Excellent.
Yes, we have you now.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Hello. So,
good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
I bring you greetings from His Excellency Papu Nkrumah, Ghana's High Commissioner to UK and Ireland. I want to salute the organizers for putting together this webinar on such an auspicious occasion as the Black History Month. Black History Month, as we all know, was introduced in 1987 as a way of focusing education establishments and wider society to recognize the impact of ethnic minority groups to British society and the culture throughout history. The unfortunate murder of George Floyd and the subsequent reaction globally, characterized by massive demonstrations on all continents, has brought to the fore more forcefully people's abhorrence for discrimination. Here in the UK, it has resulted in people from all backgrounds and cultures becoming acutely aware that inequality still exists and still affecting ethnic minorities in Britain today. Ghana, throughout her history, has been at the forefront of the fight for emancipation. And this year, we are celebrating 100 years of the death of one of our illustrious daughters, Yaa Asantewaa, who was the Queen Mother of Ejisu in Ashanti region of Ghana. She, while the men were in fear during the Anglo-Ashanti War and were debating on how best to fend off the British threat, Yaa Asantewaa held her ground and rallied the troops into a liberation fight Her leadership and passion led to her role as Commander-in-Chief of the Asante Army. In turn, the Anglo-Asante Wars, fifth and final war against the British, became known as the Yasantua War of Independence, or the War of the Golden Stool. Again, Ghana, through leadership since our first president, has been at the heart of the liberation struggles and emancipation of African continent in diverse ways. As a people, our nation subscribes to equality for people of all race and color. Recently in Luton, I learned the Kente Festival as part of the Black History Month. It is under the theme, Harnessing the Kente Heritage, enhancing exclusivity of the indigenous and diaspora communities towards participatory socio-economic development and global peace, which falls within the Black History Month. The celebration will see an integration of people of Black descent at Kente Fest. Kente is a cloth uniquely Ghanaian, and it originates date back to 12th century Africa. It received its name from the term Kente, which means basket, and draws its reference from how baskets are intricately woven together. I believe that this ties in perfectly with people of all color into one society, inclusivity of all, and are prepared to develop community goals and peace. I want to end by saying that as a people, let us strive through this month of history, building cultural dynamism expressed through the diversity of our heritage in clothes, adornments, and positive engagements in all facets of life to tell the story of whom we are, our ancestry in diversity, but yet building a unique system where all can dwell in unity and peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Deputy High Commissioner. It's a fabulous start for us today. And we're moving now on to our next speaker, who is an aeronautical engineer. But we know him as Lionel Wallace, the High Sheriff of Hertfordshire. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now? Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Enoch. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's delightful. I'm delighted to be with you this evening. Some familiar faces on the screen I can see. I'm going to spend, I think I've got about 10-15 minutes. And if I go on too long, I'm sure somebody will just cut me off. Okay. But I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes telling you a little bit about me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the High Sheriff role, and then I'm going to tell you effectively what does Black History Month mean to me in a special way, and I hope that's okay. So I'm noted as being perhaps and I'm proud to be, the first Black High Sheriff of Hertfordshire.
Return to meet Babs. Won't be long.
Okay, maybe some people need to go on mute. Thank you. First Black High Sheriff of Hertfordshire, and and that's useful. But what is a High Sheriff anyway? High Sheriff is the longest sovereign appointment in the country. It's over 1,000 years old. Has extensive, or at least it had extensive powers in the Magna Carta. 55 High Sheriffs in the serving the counties of England and Wales, and on the 10th of March 2021, Her Majesty, sitting in Windsor Castle, appointed me to be High Sheriff of Hertfordshire. I was delighted to do so. My family heritage and my background is from this island, St. Kitts and Nevis, if you know your flags. And that's really interesting for me because although I was born in the UK, this is a place that equally holds some really great memories for me as well. My family came over in the 50s Windrush generation, but not on the Windrush, because a lot of people didn't. And this is a picture, I'm sorry about the blurredness of the picture. This is a picture of my siblings, and you'll notice there's a lady in there that doesn't look quite like my siblings. I'll talk to you a little bit about her in a session. And the fabulous thing about this picture is I am not there, right? I'm number 11, and I'm not the last. So it's a big family. And one of the things I love about this picture is that the lady who's there, she was a tremendous influence in our family. And she just broke down the barriers of things that we call sort of race relations, etc. She joined with us. She's a tremendous advocate for how my family saw their relations with the UK when they came. It was really important. So if you're thinking about making some influence or some advancement in this important subject in the community, just remember, it only takes one person to cross the road and do some stuff. And that's my family now. Thank God my parents are still alive and living. There's pictures a little bit a few years ago, but they're still around and really blessed to have them still. And one of the great things is we all live in St. Albans. So if you come to St. Albans, you're bound to pop into somebody who's related to me, probably. I knew quite early on when I was growing up what I wanted to do, and I went into aviation. You may be familiar with this overhead picture. Shows you Hatfield, where the police station is now, but that used to be an airfield. And I went into aviation. This is all part of my history, and I loved it. We made this wonderful aeroplane, probably the last aircraft that was made in Hertfordshire at Hatfield, and I'm in the crowd somewhere. I won't point it out, but it's there. Tremendous history. 3rd of September 1981, over 40 years now. That was the first flight of that airplane. I was involved in activities associated with that airplane. In particular, if you've ever flown into London City Airport, I was involved in designing the routes by which we could get jet aircraft and this quiet aircraft into there. Something I'm really proud to have been associated with our test pilots, etc. Great part of my history. That's a picture of the approach into London City Airport. For those of you who's flown into there, may have been in the cockpit when you saw it. And then I decided to go and do my pilot's license. So I went over to America on what they called a crash course, which didn't please my mum, that name. So I changed the name to an accelerated flying course, and went over and learned how to fly. And this gentleman that I'm sitting next to is a great friend of mine, and he and I decided we were going to become flying partners. We flew what was called a Dawn to Dusk International Flying Competition, and we decided that our test for the day was going to be flying around the British aerospace site. So we went up to Brough, right up to Prestwick in Scotland in this little airplane, and it was a long journey, and we wrote up our citations, etc. You can see in the pictures Jodrell Bank, and then there's York Minster there in the picture. And guess what? We won the novice prize, and this is His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh presenting us with the sword. And I say to everybody, as I show this picture, as we got up from our seats when His Royal Highness got up to give us our award, he pulled out this sword, and we thought we were going to be knighted. It was a funny evening, but it was tremendous, and it was really great experience to do that. And one of the things I'd say is, some people said to me when I was younger, you wouldn't believe it necessarily, or you might, black people can't fly airplanes. Yep, somebody said that to me, and I said, that's really interesting. Is that right? When I started the engine on the aircraft, it didn't tell me I couldn't, so I did. And then when I pulled back on the column, the aircraft went into the air. So I decided that I was going to believe the airplane and not the words that were said to me. And one of the things that I've learned in my life, actually, is not to believe the lies other people believe of me. And that's really important if you're on this call and you're struggling perhaps with your identity and who you are. It's really important that you first of all know who you are as well. That's important. I went off to Indonesia to advise on aviation. This young man here, well, he's not young anymore, but I was his advisor and mentor for an aircraft project in Indonesia. Tremendous culture, and just took in almost reverse, but not all the skills that I learned at school, and understood that one of the greatest with people is love, and understand that, you know, just as been said today, we're kind of all the same. Your attitude will determine your altitude. It's going to go up. If I push down, tell me where I'll be, and you don't want to be. So keep your head up high. It's really, really important. But an engineer, and I studied law at university, but I'm an engineer in the community, and you only take into work who you are in the community. And I started being involved in the community, in youth work over many years, really enjoyed it. Pioneer Youth Club in St Albans. We started the first, if not one of the first, skateboard parks. Great to see skateboarding as part of the Olympic sports now. Been involved in the Prince's Trust, working with His Royal Highness over many years, some years ago, etc. And doing other things and working. I love people, so I love culture. I've traveled around the world. I've been very blessed and very privileged to meet lots of different people, and I love it. And I work, even currently still, with the Italians, and I minister as a minister amongst the Italian community, in particular, in young people. And it's just fantastic. And their food is really lovely as well. And I often get some pasta afterwards. That's kind of me. And I guess that in some respects, that's the person that was asked to be High Sheriff. And I haven't got time this evening to tell you how somebody might become High Sheriff. But I decided young people were always going to feature in my plan somewhere, and I've got 3 prongs and three areas to deal with it. But I'm just going to show you this brief chart. This is a chart of the age of our magistrates in England and Wales. And because young people are really important to me, and whether it's young and or diversity, we've got to do something, in my view, better than this. And the red line over that shows the age of the defendants, the people who are accused, perhaps, coming before the courts. You can see right down in the bottom, the 18 to 29 figure, which is down at about 1%. I'm saying we've got to do things better than that. And that's why it's important that diversity is celebrated in ways that we're celebrating this month, because when you try and make people feel more confident, they can participate in the community better. And the community needs great reflection of people who make decisions like magistrates do on the bench. Fill out my survey on my website, highchef.org.uk, and the magistrate survey. I'd love it if you could do that. But I'm privileged as High Sheriff to go around and meet great people, our Chief Constable, Charlie Hall, and the citations that I read when I go to the award ceremonies. And most of the people I might meet going around, etc., might not look like me. Some do, some don't. But these people do tremendous work for all of us, regardless of colour. And this is me taking Charlie to an event with the Black History Month event just from Friday, where we spoke to the Afro-Caribbean community there. We had some lovely food.
Okay, so shall I? I'll pick it back up from here.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very, very much, High Sheriff. Great to see the pictures as well. All the aeroplane pictures, and mostly when you're out in the community as well. Love the outfit. Really does become you. I know that we've got some great things to hear going forward. And our next speaker is Ruth South. a psychologist by profession and co-founder of CARE. What or who is CARE? You ask yourselves. Well, Ruth will tell us about it right now. Welcome along, Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Miles. Nice to meet you.
And you too.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here. And thank you for inviting me, Michael. You may be asking yourself, who is Communities Against Racism, also known as CARE? Okay, in June 2020, CARE was organised to help individuals in all walks of life and professions who have suffered and are still suffering from the effect of trauma by racism. We have done events like policing in the community, poetry fundraising events, we've done numerous radio interviews and so forth, and we have other great projects in the pipeline, some of which you'll hear this evening. For Black History Month, I thought it'll be a personal experience and also a call to action. But as a 5-year-old child, I was on the receiving end of racism. And this unloving, evil entity called racism was what changed my life. I was exposed to it by another 5-year-old child who said to me, I can't play with you because you're Black. And I only realized I was subconsciously carrying this trauma around for decades. Consequently, when the George Floyd murder came into my headspace, and I was forced again to relive it all over again. In fact, I remembered it like it was yesterday. But what intrigued me was that racism doesn't only affect the victims, but it also traumatizes the perpetrator. Like that 5-year-old boy, his guardians may have told him to say this with little or no understanding of the trauma he was causing not only to himself, but also to me. Both of us living with fear and shame, but for different reasons. I was now aware that racism is loveless, ageless, genderless, classless, and sadly, no one gets a pass. From this terrible experience, I quickly realized that we are all in desperate need of a reparation of the mind. We always talk about reparation economic, but the reparation of the mind is what needs to be done first. Racism has touched us all and transcends color. For example, if you're a Black person in a relationship with a white person, you get called coon, bounty, or Uncle Tom. If you're a white person with a Black partner or support the Black cause, they call you a nigger lover. If you're mixed, they call you a white nigger. If Asian, they call you a paki, a coolie, a chink. These terms are not only hurtful, but very, very disrespectful and very, very unloving. So to begin healing, the victim and the perpetrator must recognize and remember that racism is still happening globally and has been for over 580 years. CARE discovered that we would have to initiate this remembrance for ourselves. The enslaved people, our ancestors, had their lives cut short and at times in horrendous and very dehumanizing ways, whilst harvesting sugar, cotton, tea, and tobacco, plus other products like precious minerals, diamonds, gold and silver. These products are consumed or worn daily with no or little regard for those who died and suffered for global pleasure. We discovered that there is no active remembrance of victims of the transatlantic slave trade or support for the victims of racism. So for healing to begin, I designed a wreath, and if you can see here, it's called the Shu Ko Tito wreath, and I've got the flower here, and it's a wreath of remembrance. For example, you have and this is of authentic cotton. And I actually put a red bulb inside for the blood that was shed when they were picking cotton, sugar, tea, and tobacco. And these are the sugar cubes, and the rest of it represents the other resources that the slaves died for our enjoyment. So, for example, victims of World War I and World War II, every year they have the poppy appeal. The Holocaust is remembered, and the Bosnian Muslim massacre of Srebrenica in 1995, they're all remembered annually. So, Black History Month for me is an interesting time. So I have designated the Day of Remembrance to be the 31st of July, starting in 2022. So the Shukotito wreath, the acronym is sugar, tea, tobacco, and cotton, right? So I'm hopefully this will be a part of not just Black history, but of a global world change in the reparation of the mind. Black History Month for me should be a month to move forward, changing the narrative of what this month really means. It seems to focus on Black history, well, for me anyway, on a surface level. It should not only be one of history and celebration, but of solemnity, lest we forget. So CARE would like you to all support the Shukotito Remembrance Initiative to help care in the reparation of the minds of all and to replace fear with love. We have over 25 plus outstanding professionals, of which some will be speaking here today. So if you need to contact me for more information about CARE and the Shukotito wreath of remembrance, please get in touch with Enoch or Michael for more details, and thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much, Ruth. That was really illuminating, and it's just such a pleasure listening and hearing different views on how people see Black History Month and what Black History Month is to them. Now, Esther Douglas is not only Ruth's sister, but also the co-founder of CARE. And tonight, she'll be telling us why BAME is no longer relevant. I'm really looking forward to this one. Esther, tell us more.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. Are the slides available? If they're not, that's fine.
No, it's on the screen. It's on the screen, on the live screen.
Okay, so what's in a name? Don't call me BAME. And as part of CARE, we've started the initiative of the Beam Communities campaign. Now, we know that this term has been very divisive. People have not liked the term, and it's been scrapped by the government. And my sister and I, as part of CARE, we deliberated and we talked, well, they're trying to find something else to replace it. And why not think of something for ourselves, and also think, how can we best recoin the term so that it means something to others? I just don't know what's happened to my screen. It's just gone. So what CARE's mission for Beam Communities is to get various communities of people to recognize our racism is a divisive social construct which affects us all, and none of us get a pass, as my sister said earlier on, to look at various ways that we can recondition our thoughts and our feelings, and of which is the driving force of inequality, discrimination, and racism. We want to change the narrative. We want to promote allianceship while recognizing other communities who are also disadvantaged and marginalized as part of the fight for equality, while not forgetting our identity or heritage and our individual experience and journey. So we started looking at our racial trauma and how it impacts on people within our community, and how, as I said, affects our well-being mentally, physically, and so forth. So what's in the name? Our name is a part of our identity. It's part of how people recognize who we are. And we know that BAME has been divisive. People have been excluded. People have feel that they're not, they're disadvantaged. So people have said, well, why BAME? It's an acronym. Why are you reducing us to an acronym? Why? But we use acronyms of terms of reference all the time, like Communities Against Racism, CARE, Black History Month, BHM, RIP, Rest in Peace, SNP, Scottish National Party, BT, you know, Black Lives Matter, BLM, Man U, Manchester United, sorry for the weekend, but we all know that terms of reference and acronyms help us to distinguish issues or things or groups, and it's an easy term of reference. So although we don't like acronyms and we don't like BAME because you know, it's very divisive, because first we add BME, Black Minority Ethnic, and that then grew to include the Asian, which is BAME, where BAME came from, the Black Asian Minority Ethnic. But what is minority ethnic? What does it mean in 2021? As BAME is always mostly associated with Black people, it excludes the other disadvantaged group, like those from the Irish heritage. And the mixed population in 2021 was the fastest growing population. And so to leave these communities out of the very language we use is to marginalize them even further. So minority ethnic, what does it mean in 2021? So when we looked at a test case of BAME, in every case, it evoked a positive response from various races, ages, and it changed the expression on the face. So you try saying BAME and then say BAME. For most people, it evokes a smile, a positive, a feel good. And in one test case, a young man of 17, of mixed heritage, he said he felt recognized and marginalized, and he felt, because I am both Black, Jamaican heritage, I've also got a Mediterranean heritage, and I wasn't included because I wasn't Black enough to be Black, and I wasn't fitting into the Mediterranean because of the color of my skin. They didn't know who I was. So he said he felt more recognized. We feel that BAME is more palatable and it's more inclusive. So what does BAME stand for? I can hear you're all asking. So the B stands for Black, Brown, because some people still prefer to call themselves by a color. And some people call themselves British. In the census actually gave us all these things. And so you can attach what you want to with it. The European for the Irish, the Romani, the Polish. The A stands for the Asian, Southeast Asian, the Arab, the African Caribbean. And the M stands for those of mixed ethnicity or heritage. Now, as I said, the mixed population is the fastest growing. So it needs to be acknowledged in its own right. Hence, we have changed the word minority to mix, because we know we're already a minority. So why would we need to continue to use minority if we're trying to strive for equality? It's a word that makes people a power struggle. It makes people feel that they should know their place. You're less than. So, and we all know we are one blood, one people, one race, one people. So just to add some flavor to the word beam, beam is a piece of wood. It's sturdy, as you can see there in the pictures. If you can see the pictures, there's loads of components to a beam to hold up the roof. And it's about supporting an allyship of one another, equality, and it's built to maintain, just like a roof. It shields and protects, and we should be shielding and protect each other, and from the inequality and discrimination and oppression. So, and we want people to feel spiritually, physically, and emotionally well. And it's about a collective, it's about identity, and it's also about how our life chances will be if we are allowed to see ourselves as individuals and be called as individuals. So the BEAM acronym has already started to be recognized as a term of reference in various groups and identity. BEAM encourages people to be more clear and respectful of the people they are referring to, as often BAME, as I said earlier, is used to only refer to Black and brown people and excludes the recognition of the other disadvantaged communities. So the acronym can be used in these ways when looking at the BEAM communities, which are mixed heritage, when addressing the BEAM communities, which are Black, brown, or African Caribbean. There is a disproportionality of people from the BEAM communities, which are European. Those from the BEAM communities who are from Asian backgrounds, there is a disproportionality of people from the BEAM communities who are Black and Asian or mixed in the criminal justice system. That's just to name a few of ways that we can integrate BEAM into our terminology, into our policies, into the way we acknowledge each other. It also gives us a conversational piece. So our people are describing themselves as their identity. Who am I? So we not only get the identity, we get the data, because we can still collect the data from that. Because I know some people, when we were piloting this, were talking about, well, for data purposes. But as I said, the census already helped us to do that. So this is what BEAM stands for: Black, brown, British, European, just to repeat, A for the Asian, the African Caribbean. And we are asking government and charities and organizations to continue to endorse and start using the term of reference or acronym BEAM. And if you want more details, you can contact Ruth, who is the founder, myself, the co-founder, at info@communitiesagainstracism.com. And our telephone number is also available, and you can ask Michael or Enoch for our details. So I've really condensed this presentation. And so I'm hoping that you have got a sense of what BEAM is, what BEAM's about, and it's a more positive, motivational, and it's about helping all those people who may not have had a voice before to now feel included. And BEAM is a more positive word. So thank you. And I hope that we will be using BEAM from now and in the future. And for those who are in your organizations, that you will be promoting it within your organizations. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Esther. BEAM with a smile. Brilliant. I like that. And remember, you all heard it here first. And if that didn't get your attention, you wait until you hear the next presentation. Now, Adrian Roberts is a psychotherapist, author, entrepreneur, plus Religious liberties leader at the North England Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. He's also a public speaker who's known for tackling sensitive issues head on. All right, from George Floyd to knife crimes to black history to racism in Christianity and the wider society. Tonight, he's going to speak to us on the colour of Jesus. Interesting. Over to you, Adrian.
You're on mute.
Thank you very much for your introduction. It's quite a privilege. I didn't expect all that, and I thank you all for allowing me to say something. Listening to all that have gone before, it's quite interesting to see how racism has evolved over the years. You know, the use of terms which we no longer consider politically correct today, you know, nigger, packy, sambo, all those terms, they're terms that are in your face and you can meet them head on. But a cartoon appeared in the newspapers a little while ago after the passing of Prince Philip, which was one of those that was amusing, but it made you feel guilty for laughing at the same time. But it really did point out the actual issue that I want to deal with this evening. And Prince Philip died, and it has a picture of Jesus standing on a cloud, obviously near the gates of heaven. And Prince Philip has risen up to heaven, and he's just taken his hat off in polite greetings to Jesus. And the actual caption underneath says, a little bit darker than I expected. And that humor made me think that there is something underlying in global society in relation to Christianity that isn't as in your face as overt racism and slavery and all the things that happened in the past, whether you're talking about the use of different types of pseudoscience to suggest, like Johann Blumenbach, who said that Black people are only 3/5 human. And so what I want to do is relay some of the things that the history of this, because what it has actually done, the idea in the Western world of Jesus as the supreme being, God, the Trinity, the perception has come over the years. Now, I'm not here to talk about people's opinions. I'm just referencing the Bible. And proof of what I want to say is a little experiment that I did, first of all in churches, but I also did it in Zoom because I felt more confident. I thought I wouldn't be dragged off a cliff and thrown off a cliff. I took a picture into a black church, an A4 picture of the traditional image of Jesus as a European figure. And so the church is predominantly black, and I said, who is this? And the people said, Jesus, Jesus. And so then while they've said that, I ripped up the picture in little pieces and dropped it on the floor. And I could hear the gasps of breath, the shock. And then that gave sufficient focus then to actually look at the issue. Now, let me say here, first of all, this is not an issue about black against white or anything like that, because remember at the very beginning that we all came from Adam and Eve. That's our belief. If one doesn't believe in Christianity, then scientists are saying nowadays that we all came from Africa. So we're one family. I think it was Martin Burnell, he wrote a book called Black Athena, which gave those proofs that we all came from one source. But what has happened over the years, there has been something that has undercut subliminally the perceptions of the vast number of people on the planet, brown and black people. And that is the idea that the supreme being, God, Jesus, angels, do not look like you. They are more based on the Aryan images from, whether you're going to talk about Nazi Germany or something like that, that may be one thing. But this is a very uncomfortable subject. And it's not often dealt with because it is uncomfortable and it's not politically correct in these times. However, my interest is not in political correctness. My interest is not in making people feel comfortable, but my interest is in the pursuit of truth. And so from this perspective, it's interesting to look at the first images of Jesus. Now, I don't know if the pictures are up because I can't see them, but I will talk anyway. The first images of Jesus that were done, the paintings, in the first couple of centuries after the recorded death, resurrection, and ascension. When you look at those pictures, if you can't see them here, you'll be able to, you can Google them and you can see that this was a dark-skinned person. But one I want to show you, because I don't know whether you actually can see, but this one, also the pictures that have come in these times do not even represent the demographic of people from Nazareth. I mean, here you can see this old man and his grandson. They're from Nazareth, and there are many like that to show that what the people from Nazareth looked like. Now, history shows, and today it's very difficult. I avoid confrontation, but I would say here you'll see that picture there of the picture of God and Adam by Leonardo da Vinci, and that whole idea of God being an old white man who sits on a throne in heaven. And you put that on one side. I have a cosmic picture of the creator. Well, no one has seen God. There it is there. That picture of the creator, the maker. But then somehow this evolved into an elderly man sitting on a throne in the sky. And when you have that on one side, the supreme being, the immortal, the all-powerful, looks like a certain section of society. And then you think, well, some people say, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color Jesus is. Well, they say don't answer a question with a question, but I don't agree with that statement, because sometimes when you ask another question, you make the initial question very clear. If it doesn't matter what color Jesus is, then why was he whitened or lightened if it doesn't matter? Even when, first of all, when Christianity began to spread and it went through Ethiopia and came down through Europe, the first images of Mary and Jesus were darker. That's why they were called the Black Madonna. And in my collection of pictures, you can see lots of different ones that came into Europe, the Black Madonnas. What happened in the 15th century, there was a Pope, Pope Alexander VI, commissioned Leonardo da Vinci to, after removing a lot of these images, you find the commissioning of Leonardo da Vinci to paint a picture of Jesus lightened, using his son, Cesare Borgia, to actually do this. And so the picture, the image of Jesus began to lighten. Now, today, people are beginning to say, no, that didn't really happen. It's very difficult to find out truth in even on the internet these days. We live in a post-truth era. I mean, today they're saying, you know, take the vaccine, don't take the vaccine. I don't want to go off piste, but you find reasons on one side, reasons on the other. Things for health, they say, only eat carrots, you know, they're very good. And then you look up somewhere else, it says, don't eat carrots. They've found new things, they're not good for you. And you can find that with all sorts of things. And so what I look at is not the history of what happened in terms of that history of Pope Alexander VI, but the effect of the change. The change happened at some point. You find Jesus does not represent that demographic. You don't even need to look at a pope. In the Bible, if you look in the Bible, you'll see it in Revelation chapter 2 and Revelation chapter 4. You find there the descriptions. John sees Jesus in vision, and he describes him as having feet like burnished bronze, and a skin like the jasper stone or the sardine stone. And in these images, you can see that I've put here the colors that they look like. And so it becomes very clear. And so that cartoon of Prince Philip going to heaven, seeing Jesus, taking his hat off and saying, oh, he's a bit darker than I expected, is quite amusing. But there is a more serious side, because while the supreme being is presented as European, which doesn't even represent the demographic, what has happened over the years, this has been promoted. Angels, Jesus, God, all looking European. And then what images do you find of the black man? You will find him, first of all, I saw it in a theatre production in the 70s when I was a kid, and I knew, at the age of 10, I knew something was wrong. In Jesus Christ Superstar, there was this actor, this theatrical actor called Carl Anderson. And at that time, it was a theatre production, and then it became a film. And then you had the film with Robert Powell as Jesus Christ. And all the way through these films, what do you see? The disciples are white, Jesus is white, and the perception of God as being white. And who is black? Judas, the betrayer. I guarantee you that no one who is listening to this presentation in this group has met anyone whose name is Judas. Judas, the betrayer, that name is like a cuss word that goes down through history. No one is called Hitler today because of the history. No one is called Judas. But all the time in the paintings, in the films, in the theatrical productions, he's painted as a black, he is portrayed as a black man. And also in the paintings of Jesus being tempted, you find Jesus as a European. And look at the devil, the Satan, the tempter, the one who attempts to tempt him. You find in these images all the way through, I've got loads of them. Jesus is white, Satan is dark-skinned. Evil is dark, evil is black. Funerals, death is black. Weddings, happy occasions are white. And you could go to blackmail, all these terms that are negative. And the irony is I forgot about the one called whitewash or brainwash. And so while we think of the more obvious things where you use negative terms and offensive terms, like as I said before, the nigger, sambo, packy, and all of those, that's on the surface. But this has been perpetuated through art and through the media, and it has silently affected our minds. Do you know why I put that picture of a cosmic God in here? It's because when this came to me, even as an adult, the amount of time, as a Christian, I pray, I talk to God, and I have had to unlearn that image in my mind when I'm talking to God or to Jesus. I think of a white man sitting in a chair in heaven with a beard listening to me, and Jesus, a white man, interceding between God and me. I have to unlearn that, not because I don't like white people, but because it's not even how it is presented in the Bible, and because of the psychological effect that white people are superior and black people are, or brown-skinned people, the majority people on the planet, are inferior. And I think this subliminal image or impression is something that is so awkward and uncomfortable that you don't want to talk about it because you're going to cause offense. You're seeing black churches, pictures of white angels, all with blonde hair, none of them with brown. And so what's happened is this has gone under the radar. And it's affected so many people. And it doesn't just affect black people's opinion of themselves, it can also affect white people's opinion of themselves in relation to us. And so you get things like white privilege, white superiority, and black people feeling subconsciously inferior. That's why you find black people trying to bleach their skin and, you know, straightening their hair for years. That wasn't just a fashion statement. It was because we got to look different from what we are. And so we got to change ourselves. Although now everyone wants to look like everyone else. You got white girls with silicone in their behinds and silicone in the top lip and everything. I call it the duck lip. And so you got black people wanting to look like white people, and white people want to look like black people. I understand surgery, plastic surgery for people who have moles and birthmarks in their face and hair lips and all this type of thing. But this general idea of us wanting to recreate ourselves in the image of man, as opposed to that which God has created us. God, whether you believe in him, whether we believe in him or not, these are my final remarks. I believe that the Creator is a lover of variety. That's why in a garden, you don't just see tulips, you don't just see roses, you don't just see lilies, you see the whole lot. You see white, yellow daisies, buttercups in the garden, because the Creator loves variety, and that's how he made us. And we are meant to love each other and the differences. We are, you know, this is the last thing. When I listen to this, if I just 2 minutes here. I was in foster, I was fostered for a little while as a child. And I remember I was fostering a white family, and one time I said, I want to have some rice. And the lady, she went in the kitchen, she brought out some rice for dinner. It was rice pudding, it had rice with jam in the middle. I was 3 years old. I said, no, I don't want that, Doris. I want rice, you have it with meat.
Well, no.
You have it with meat. And so she rolled her eyes, went back into the kitchen, and she came out with rice with butter in it. I was too young to understand how to cook it, but I knew it was a savory thing. And I said, no.
Pastor, can I give you 20 seconds to wrap up, please?
Sure. I started to cry.
Thank you so much.
And what happened is this. Now we have pizza. We have rice and peas. We have Chinese food. We have Indian food. We bring everything to the table because everyone matters and everyone contributes. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry to go on.
No problem, Adrian Roberts. Thank you very, very much for that. Wow. I particularly love those pictures myself, those images. Very powerful. I like that. Thank you for that. Before I introduce our next speaker, just to remind you, if you could put your mics on mute if you're not speaking. And for those presenting, just think of the time and make your presentations time if you can. Dr. Kevin Nkube now joins us from South Africa. Now, Dr. Nkube is the senior lecturer in marketing in the Faculty of Business and Management Science at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Now, his current research focus is on using trans-languaging to put African languages at the centre of the re-intellectualization of the continent. Now, for the building of the continent that loves Africans, by Africans, for all Africans at home and in the diaspora. I really do want to hear more about this. So the floor is yours, Dr. Nkube.
You're on mute as well, Kevin.
Oh, thank you, Mal. Sorry about that. Yeah. Molweni, this is how we greet in Xhosa in the south of the continent. You would simply say Molweni back, so it's not very difficult. Okay. Having lived in the UK, at first, Black History Month was a pleasure. It was quite nice to hear a month where it was a collection of the achievements of so many Black people, mostly political, and there were sprinkles here and there of professional Black people, Black achievements. I must say, it was before the first Black History Month I experienced in the UK that something started to look a little awkward. Why would there be a single month for Black history? And here, drawing on Professor Odora Hopers, who talks about the injustice of what is missing in what we are taught in the curriculum, this became quite clear that the world was being given quite an imbalanced view of who has been doing what. And I think Black History Month, while we would like it to be a pleasure, would like to celebrate it, it also has its solemn parts. And here, as a people, we come together to acknowledge these injustices that have befallen us, that have been perpetrated on us as a people of the continent. In the continent, torn apart, our people moved across the world, and up to today, the injustices continue to be perpetrated on a people because of what we look like. I think somebody's already said that everybody did come from the continent, but for some reason we're given this monopoly. We're not afraid of or ashamed of being Africans, but we also know that who we are, the color of our skin, continues we continue to be purged, to be persecuted because of just who we are. And for me, having followed through quite a few Black History Month, what I would really like us to do is to think about having an internal conversation as a people who are most affected. But here, I think as we have this internal conversation, we are talking about our position in the world. And I think the importance of an internal conversation here is to really draw on Esther Douglas from America, who talks about a category of experiences that some people cannot have. I think the feminist movement have reminded us men quite a lot that we don't know what it's like to be a woman. And we'd like to remind some people that it doesn't matter how kind they are, the experience of living in a Black body can actually be very unique. And as a people, when we're having this internal conversation, we need to understand that there may be people who may be quite kind and very nice, but if they have not shared our experiences, it means that they cannot know what we know. They cannot understand the problems that we face every day in the manner that we do. And for me here, what I'm saying in this internal conversation, we need to think about organizing ourselves into and reclaiming these disciplines. I think a lot of work has been done right in England by scholars, academics like Kente Andrews, who talks about the importance of an education that actually targets the Black child, to develop them, to have the Black child understand how they've been positioned historically in the world. Now, the Black History Month, because of, is important, uncomfortable as it may be, because today is actually a projection of those things that happened in the past. And tomorrow is actually going to be a result of the things that we do today. As small as they may be, the things that we do today will affect our future. And we need to, I'm going back to this here, to reclaim the disciplines. We need to think about organizing ourselves, whether we are lawyers, whether we are educators, or whatever field we are in, to start thinking about how we can bring together these fields to actually build our people. And we also need to understand that while we come from a continent that is defined by collectivity, our education system has taught us otherwise, individualism. And we also want to know that as a people, we are also highly infiltrated. We need to think quite closely about when we're having a disagreement, when there's a disagreement between brother and sister, I mean, sibling rivalry needs to be dealt with. It's there in every family. There's nothing genetically violent about Black people. There's nothing genetically, causing conflict simply by who we are. And therefore, the important thing here is to acknowledge that when we're having disagreements, we treat them as simple familial disagreements. And I think for me, the challenge that I'm putting out to everyone is really to say, going forward, let us think about putting our heads together and building a world that has a place for Africans and that loves Africans. Thank you.
Thank you from South Africa, Dr. Nkube. That was profound. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Gilroy Brown, who was in education for 40 years as a teacher, head teacher, and school advisor. Now he's a pastor and part-time education consultant. Gilroy, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Well, thank you, Miles, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to try and keep within the time allotted myself, as I think the speaker did. I'm going to give a personal take on this also. For me, I don't spend so much time celebrating, and that's not because I'm a killjoy, but I try to use it for more sort of personal, solemn, reflective purpose. I'm not taking away the fact that Black history shouldn't exist, and that we shouldn't have a moment of celebration. As the promotional leaflet for this event said, that it's celebrating Black individuals, their achievements and contributions to British society, and to foster an understanding of Black history in general. But for me, a third point should be to create a sense of urgency and a genuine desire to bring about fundamental change. There's just token changes and there's real change. And each time when Black History Month comes around, because I'm Black 365 days of the year, as we all are, I can't help but ask the questions, well, what's really changed? I look at like a stock taking. Businesses do stock taking annually. What's really changed? I look at our place in society and examine what has really changed fundamentally and structurally. If you look at the global experience of Black people over the last, say, 70 years, Emmett Till, a 14-year-old African-American boy in 1955 was lynched. You know the story. And no justice. George Floyd, murdered by a policeman in 2020, 70 years on. And we just about got some kind of justice, just about, and still it hasn't affected society fundamentally, but something's happened. Our three players, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, and Bukayo Saka, who, sadly, they had the weight of the nation on their shoulders, missed 3 penalties, suffered terrible racial abuse. The thing that links the three of them are, again, they're victims of this hostile environment. You didn't do anything wrong. If you do, the wrath of what comes your way as a singular Black person against the tide of racism is terrible. And yet, and again, we still have to wait for justice to be done. That's the situation that we live in as a people. I'm not saying this to alarm, but at the same time, we have to accept that that is a reality. Not saying it's the reality, but it is a reality. And we have to address that. So for me, it's about us taking the time to examine certain things that have to be addressed and not swept under the carpet. And by that, I mean, if we're talking about urgency and a desire to change, that fundamental change has got to involve legislation, major changes in the law, on the political will of the government of the day to do something differently, not to commission reports that straight away are supposed to disprove that racism exists or whatever, that kind of thing. Too much has happened and we've got to start taking things seriously. I also look at it in terms of what have we achieved ourselves as members of the Black community to impact our own community and to impact society at large. There are changes, that's very, very true. But in my experience, changes are very, very slow. In my experience, changes are not happening at the pace that really is required in order to make a big difference. We still have institutions that stand as gatekeepers who measure how much change should be made. And what I feel we should do as a people, and people who are non-white, who are not, or people who are not Black, who all can empathize with our cause, need to stand up and to challenge the powers that be and speak truth to power. And I've been rather heartened by what I've seen over the last 12, 18 months for the Black Lives Matters marches, where you had young white millennials now seeing the light, joining with people of color to demand that change is made once and for all. Now, if I was to ask the question, so Arden, you said this, Gilroy, what is it that you'd like to see? I don't claim to be an expert, but some of the things I'd like to see if we're talking about genuine change are as follows. I'd like to see institutions exercise courage to address diversity and equality and speak out against the lack of representation and all the equality. There's a time for institutions to stop, take stock, and look back at what they've done. Look at themselves and see, are we really a fair and equal society? Are we really doing the best we can for all? A period of reflection for them also. A day and a month should be set aside. I'd like to see institutions that have made a start in doing something move beyond the rhetoric and move into something more strategic. Strategic being putting things in place that will create sustainable change and not just plaster over cracks. We've had numerous commissions from the Rampton report, the Swan report of 40 years ago. Many recommendations were made that if they were implemented 30, 40 years ago, what a difference it would have been made now. The Macpherson report, if that was taken seriously, what differences would have been made and the improvements for all that would have been experienced today? So enough of the tokenism, enough of the nonsense. The political will not even to implement, not even one of the Swan or Rampton recommendations, just shows you that it's not so much that the powers that be don't know the truth, they don't want to accept the truth. But as long as that happens, you know, they're all saying no justice, no peace, no justice. I'd like to see also institutions that have made a start to move beyond the rhetoric, as I said before, looking at the people of color within their own organizations. What are they doing seriously to address recruitment, retention, development, and representation at decision-making levels, making sure that we've got people of color in those positions. I worked in education for a very, very long time. I was the first Black male head teacher of a primary school in Birmingham back in the late 80s. Now that's a proud achievement, yes, but was I the only Black man or Black person clever enough and able enough to get that position? No, it was because the gatekeepers felt that one was enough at the time. And that's what we're going to look at. We're going to push the doors open. If we remove the barriers, the talent will rise. It's not a question that there's no talent out there. We are still being suppressed, and we're going to call it for what it is. And last of all, I'd like to see institutions, especially the media, driven by a moral duty to share the true narrative of the Black experience in this country and the contributions made to British society, to change mindsets and behaviors. A prominent channel the other day was lauded, and there's a lot of hoopla about them deciding that in Black History Month, there's going to have a day called Black to Front, where they allowed every program to be headed by a Black person. How wonderful is that? And once that day had finished, those people locked back in the cupboard and forgotten and left for another year. Now, if the media has the power to do that for one day, and it didn't cause a riot, British society didn't fall apart, why couldn't it be done every day? If it's done every day, it just might make that difference that will make a real difference for all. So enough of the rhetoric, enough of the excuses. We've had 40 years of we'll investigate this, we'll investigate that, we'll do this and do the other. Start doing it properly. Accept the truth, do the right thing. We are here to help you make that change for the better. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Gilroy. Loads of firsts happening today. First head teacher, as we've just heard. First sheriff, I've got a first as well. I was the first black alternative comedian to entertain the troops in the war zone. Oh, bet you didn't know that. All right, so Alfina and Lovu is the treasurer at CARE. And I'd also like to let you know that One Vision and CARE are now partners. So congratulations on that. Alfina will now share with us what Black History Month means to her. Over to you, Alfina.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for having me. So Black History Month for me as a sub-Saharan African mother of 2 boys, and given my financial background, it's better appreciated from 2 perspectives. The first one is the financial perspective, and the other one from the mother perspective. It's very important for me to understand the financial security of and future of my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. So that's why I adopt this perspective. And I believe it's important to everyone, particularly Black people. So Black History Month has a bit of history, which I've been digging, and which I've kind of connected given my financial background. That makes me appreciate the bigger picture. And that allows us collectively to understand as Africans or as Black people, why we are here today, how we got here, and most importantly, let's talk about where we are going after these October talks, because they come year in, the year out. But I think it matters to me exactly to really know where are we going. I'll talk as an economic migrant who has been in the UK for just over a decade. Whenever I see the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, and our Finance Minister, Rishi Sunak, when they announce on the news that they are doing anything and everything to keep the NHS alive and the UK economy running, that kind of hits me hard. For me, keeping NHS alive, it means brain drain. And keeping the UK economy working, it reminds me of this quote that I saw. It says 75% of minerals traded in the London stock market are from Africa, and none of them are owned by the children of Africa. Sad as that may be, however, there is a little glimpse of good news. The good news is that the scientists, they estimate about only 10% of resources have been exploited in Africa. So that leaves us with about 90% to think about, to talk about. So for me, what should that mean for us as Black people in the UK, talking in October? It means we should start having these internal conversations that will allow us to come together, particularly Africans and Afro-Caribbeans. We are brothers and sisters. We as Africans, we come from the colonial rule. That's the burden, that's the yoke which is upon our shoulders. And the Afro-Caribbean, they have the slavery yoke. So let's come together and talk about this, because our origins, our roots are in Africa. There are conversations already going on in the native continent. So I feel it's imperative that when we talk here, we group ourselves as professionals, as a people, have concrete structures that can allow us to merge, to come together with our brothers from Africa. So what are the implications of Black History Month from a financial perspective? I can't talk about Black History Month and not mention the capitalist ideology and neoliberal policies enacted by the financial institutions, the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944, which gave birth to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. These systems, both the IMF and World Bank, they have been designed to deter developing countries, particularly African countries, from having financial freedom. For example, my personal experience, where I come from, the sub-Saharan region, I have seen one particular policy. It's called ESAP, Economic Structural Adjustment Program. It was enacted in one of the countries I'll pick as a case study, Zimbabwe. A lot of people lost their jobs. According to the IMF and World Bank, the policy was meant to stimulate growth and employment. However, it was the opposite. The outcome was devastating. Since then, that was 1990, the region has suffered economic paralysis and has not recovered until today. So that is why whenever I hear the Boris Johnson talk about the NHS alive, it just means brain drain. And this is happening every single day. So for me, Black History Month is a solemn reminder of the injustices of slavery and colonization that we carry daily on our shoulders. This is the sad reality, and the narrative has got to change. I strongly believe that as Black people, we have the acumen to establish economic powerhouses that we need. Like I said, that I'm very concerned about the future of my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So I advocate that we have platforms that we create as professions. We come up with, we pull our heads together. I would openly propose a bank, that we form a bank out of these talks of Black History Month, where we can organize our finances, manage them collectively. Once we have a bank, we have the power to determine the allocation of resources. We can decide who succeeds or not. Black people, they can come forward, bring their business ideas, do the projects that they've so much wanted to do with all the support the heads put together. I strongly believe that economic empowerment is the only way that can afford us a level ground for creating economic structures that will last for generations and change the narrative as Black people of a beautiful continent. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Alfina. That was wonderful. Thank you. From a treasurer to fundraising now. Now, Razwan Faraz is National Fundraising Manager at Human Appeal, an international humanitarian charity, and founder of Man's Sheds, where he supports the social health of men from migrant and working class backgrounds. He'll now share his experience. What does it all mean, Razwan?
Well, firstly, thank you so much, Miles, to introduce myself, and thank you to the speakers so far and the attendees. I'd like to begin with a personal example, just to really give context to what Black History, as well as Black History Month, and I make that demarcation for a reason. What that means to me, at the very least, is that I think I was around 4 or 5 years old, and you may not be able to see, but I've got curly hair. And as a young 4 or 5-year-old, when I was coming into myself, I looked into the mirror and I remember deciding to grow out my hair over the summer period. And so in September, I came into school, and a couple of the kids, these were Pakistani Asian kids, turned to me and they began to mock my hair, called it, why have you got pubes growing on your hair, and what have you. Now, at the time, I received it as hate towards myself. And later on, I began to realize that it wasn't hate towards me. It wasn't hate towards curly hair. It was actually anti-Blackness that was being expressed by these young children towards myself. And so it's very important that we recognize that anti-Blackness manifests itself in many, many parts, even from the mouths of those who are considered or at least what we're looking to change in our narrative, those who are considered to be from migrant or minority backgrounds itself. So Black History Month for me really is I would say, a moment of truth. In many ways, it's a measure of where we are at as a society and where we are going in how we deal with each other and how we respond to those truths. Yes, it is, of course, a moment to celebrate, but it's also a moment to reflect and check. If you think about the schooling that many of us have received, have we ever learned and did we ever know of, for example, Matthew Cherry, who was in 1886 invented the tricycle, or Garnet Morgan in 1923, a Black inventor who invented the traffic lights, or Thomas Carrington in 1876, another Black inventor who invented the stethoscope, or Mary Brown, a Black inventor who invented in 1966 the early home security system, or 1986, Dr. Patricia Bath, who invented a laser phaco probe, a laser cataract treatment, and she was also the first Black American to receive a medical patent. Many of us, including myself, didn't learn of any of this in school. And so it's a reflection for us. Black History Month becomes a reflection for us to see, how do we measure how we treat the truth of our history in and of itself, and to look and see, how are we actively engaging with those who are still continuing to purport and push inequality and injustice in the world today? I, over the weekend, went to Argos to purchase some oil heaters because the winter months are coming upon us. And I saw that the entire shop had Black History Month posters, and it looked lovely to see that. But then I looked onto the website of who owns Argos, and it's Sainsbury's for those of you who may know. And I looked at who actually is sitting on the managerial board, who are their directors. And lo and behold, it's 6 white men, 2 white women, and 1 non-white person. So you can see at a corporate level, it's very easy to throw out these Black History Month posters, but what does it actually look like for you on your day-to-day reality? Is Black History Month just used as a way to bring in our coin, our pound, to their store to say that actually this is a store that values us as people? No, it doesn't. It has to come on a managerial level, on a policy level, on all of these levels for us to really appreciate and measure how Black History Month happens. I think in so many ways, Black History Month really is a time for us to regather, to regroup, to re-energize ourselves, and to hold people to account who are deliberately blindsiding our education system, our media, our corporations, because it is our role in this society that we're living in that has to be recognized as an equal role in where we are at. And so what I would say is that most of all, Black History Month really is a month for us to celebrate that we are here and we are here to stay itself. And more importantly, I would say it's an opportunity for us to realize and allow Black History Month to be as a reminder that we as a community deserves so much more. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Razvan. Thank you so much. I love that, actually, got to say. Our next speaker is Ian Henry, a solicitor, an author, a radio presenter and poet. What is your perspective on Black History Month, Ian?
Thank you, Miles. That's very kind of you. What can I say that hasn't already been said with elegance and passion tonight by Alfina, Razwan, Gilroy, Esther, Ruth? It's been said what it means to me. And going back to what Razwan was saying so eloquently, it's a time to regather and regroup and to think, why is it only 1 month? Shouldn't it be every day? Shouldn't it be Black History every day? Because to give it 1 month is tokenism. All I can offer with humility, bearing in mind what's already been said tonight, is a poem. The poem was written for CARE, Communities Against Racism Enterprise. It's published in my latest collection, Poems of Hope, which was launched at the Wolverhampton Literature Festival in Wolverhampton Art Gallery. One blood, one people, one race. And this poem is called One Blood. One blood. Although we have different skin, the pulse of life beats in all of our hearts. Regardless of the wars which tear apart, people all bleed the same colour within. The human race is one which we can win. The world's rivers flow into one ocean, and we have the same needs and emotions. To give up on ourselves would be a sin. The world is not separate warring states. One people, one kingdom, and one planet. Hearts filled with love and not full of granite. And we must stop the misery and hate. One blood. Come together and celebrate. Tears of pain replaced by laughter and mirth. It is time to prove humanity's worth. One blood, shared lives, together in one fate. So Miles, one blood, one people, one race. Take care, God bless.
Thank you so much, Ian. Love that as well. Well, it's great to hear all the perspectives and the thoughts of so many different people about the same subject. So we're now going to go to the chair of One Voice, Sharon Platt Mcdonald, and she'll now address us on what Black History Month means to her. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Miles. And I was so enthused by all the previous speakers. Wonderful. You know, if I was to start to make a preface, rather, I would like to ask a question. I'd like to ask, what use is history if the past does not inform the present? You see, with the knowledge of history comes the understanding of our world and ourselves as we define what's important to us. And of course, we could hear that here this evening. And so each October, here we are in the UK, we look back to remember the Black experience, to mark what has passed, to celebrate where we are now and what we are now, and to define the future we wish to see. Now, let me just share that my life experiences around race has been bittersweet, but it's taught me to ask the question, what is the point of Black History Month and how does it impact me personally? And to answer that, there are 3 C's, ABC, yes, that I will briefly outline, and these are courage, celebration, and change. Now, the word courage is an interesting one, and the courage of our race to withstand the atrocities of slave trade and still continue to be productive, purposeful, and significantly present has never ceased to amaze me. And I salute the courage of my parents that they exhibited in the face of extreme racism, but emerged to teach us that we can triumph over tragedy, to embrace courage, to become better instead of bitter. Now, I remember my mother recounting to myself and my siblings the trauma of travel when she was pregnant with my older brother and myself. And she shared how when heavily pregnant, squashed on the underground, she would receive blows to her back and her abdomen, not knowing who had assaulted her in the crowded train. And she spoke of having to shield her pregnant belly with a large bag when she was carrying me in utero after one particular vicious attack. And, you know, I just want you to imagine when you are punched by an opponent, it's intended to bring you down. And I've always looked back and imagined being punched in utero as a catalyst to propel me forward. And in fact, I didn't go down. And when my mum said I started breaking records from early on, I walked at 7 months. And so I intend to break more records. But I've been punched in different ways since then. But each time my faith has kept me going in spite of obstacles. And like the time our secondary school form teacher hid the application forms of all the Black students in our class so that none of us got to universities that calendar year, including, in my case, nursing school. I couldn't hear from all the nursing schools I'd applied for, only to find that she did not send our applications through. And subsequently, I lost a year of career life along with my other Black classmates due to racism. And after many hurdles from gatekeepers, various gatekeepers, when I eventually got into the nursing school of my choice, St. Thomas's Hospital, I hope you can see it there on the screen. Lucas, if you can put that up momentarily, I was able to use the skills that I had learned in what I called my wilderness years to my advantage. So the year that I didn't get into my nursing school, so I don't hear from them, my application, as I said, hadn't been sent in. During that year, I took a job as an auxiliary nurse, which meant when I finally got into the Nightingale School of Nursing, St. Thomas's Hospital, I was ahead of the class of 83 of those nursing students, passing all my assignments with flying colors, because in that year, I took a menial job to learn basic nursing skills. And then on graduation, I was informed by my nursing tutor that I had received the highest score in the class of 53 students, all Caucasians. 52 Caucasian students, if you can't see on the screen, and one person of color, myself. And I was told by the form tutor that I'd received the highest scores in every segment of assignments. However, it was decided that I would not be getting the award of excellence of Nurse of the Year or Nurse of the Class, as the nursing school panel had decided that the Nightingale School of Nursing was not yet ready to give such a prestigious award to a Black nurse. Now, the word courage took on a fresh perspective, and it still does today. But at that moment, instead of utter despair, it sort of catapulted me forward to say, in spite of being held back and in spite of being denied what was truly mine, I gained the courage, remembering my parents, the way they fought racism, on their knees in prayer, with politeness and with courage to press forward in spite of the discrimination I faced repeatedly because of my race, and especially as I navigated my career path and every glass ceiling I encountered. Yet my achievements have served to demonstrate to others that progress and success is still possible. You know, it was Michelle Obama who said this: history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. And so I chose to hope. Celebration, the second scene. You know, as I read through the list of inventors, I was amazed. You know, hearing the presenters tonight explain some of the inventors, I was amazed that people of color had done so many things. And as I read through the list of inventors and academics and high achievers in every field of society, from the sciences and medical professions to media and entertainment, there is much to celebrate. We can celebrate. And I celebrate the fact that as a Black race, we have a seat at the table as a contributor in every facet of life. Yes, it may not be there all the time, but we're making it, we're getting there. And I celebrate the freedom that we now have as a race comparative to what we used to have. I celebrate the fact that today, each one of us on this platform is making a positive mark in the present, which will make for a richer history. And then there's change. Yet, even as we celebrate the continued achievements and contributions of Black people in the UK and around the world, there is a recognition that there is much more to accomplish in our fight against racism, to ensure equal representation, to ensure a full seat at the table, to ensure equity of access to all opportunities, and acknowledgements for our attainments continually. So there is still change that is needed. Change to mindsets that still believe the superiority of one race over another. Change to attitudes that persist in all strata of organizations and society as a whole, which gives some individuals advantage over others. Change that will enable the future to spotlight race in its varied and brightest colors than the darkened hues of its past. And so I close with the words of the young poet Amanda Gorman. the new dawn blooms as we set it free. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Sharon. And it was great meeting you at the One Voice Community Festival recently. Sharing the stage with you. We had such a fantastic day that day. And another gentleman I met that day, excellent dancing to the music as well, I must say, is a Member of Parliament for Watford. Dean, what are your thoughts on the Black History Month?
Well, first of all, can I just say what a privilege it's been to listen in throughout the past, well, it's coming up to 2 hours, I think, isn't it? It's been incredibly important. And I always think it always comes to mind the phrase that it's not enough to listen with open ears, but you must listen with an open mind as well. And I'm very grateful for the contributions and the thoughts and points of view, and the fact that, as was stated, I think earlier, speaking truth to power, as it were. Although I don't always feel that powerful, but I do. I do listen openly, and I just want to say a few words, if I may. So, first of all, one of the things that I'm very proud to be is an ambassador for the Nelson Mandela Memorial Book, and I was given that position because of the work that I've done around tackling racism and encouraging a much stronger, more cohesive community. And I'd love to follow up with all of you actually over the coming weeks and months through the brilliant work that One Vision and One Voice are doing to ensure that we've got a cohesive community in Watford and beyond, because I think the work there's always work to be done, and we've heard that very loud and clear today. And I think one of the phrases that Nelson Mandela famously said was that it seems impossible until it's done. And I think that's such an important message for what we're talking about tonight. You know, we can't change the past, but we can change the future. And I think the word that was used just now in the excellent speech just before me from Sharon was the word platform. And I think there's a really important role to use, you know, all of our voices as a platform for improving society. I want to talk just, if I may, just about a couple of practical things that I'm involved in, though. One is that you may see it a lot on the news tonight, actually. I'm on the Online Safety Bill Committee, or also known as the Online Harms Bill. And what we've heard over the past few months as part of that committee, so the way that this works, sorry, just to put it into context, is that when new law is coming through, you have various bill committees. But this one is unusual because we've got what's called a joint committee, which is a pre-legislative committee. And the premise is that we're looking at the law around how we can try and tackle online abuse, especially including racism, and especially in terms of abuse towards young people, within the law that still protects freedom of speech. And over the past few months, as part of this joint committee, so it's members from all parties, but also both Lords and MPs, to look at this bill and look at how we tackle this, and how do we tackle the big platforms like Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and so on, in terms of how they spread what can be at times vile messages. And one of the people I spoke to a few weeks ago was Rio Ferdinand, the footballer that you may know, the England footballer, and he gave some really compelling evidence to me about the awfulness of the racism that he has received and the impact of social media on his wider family. And that's only just continued in terms of the conversations we've had. Just today, I was interviewing the Facebook whistleblower who highlighted the issues that, or many thousands of documents that she shared about Facebook not taking abuse seriously. And the reason why I wanted to reference that tonight is because I think there's this permeating piece in society where we do hear about abuse. We hear especially about racist abuse and the need to be able to end that, but also encourage people to be mindful of it and to report it and to be considerate of others, but also tackling the vile abuse of it. Because what we've seen over the past few months, and especially in the England match a few months ago, which I talked to Rio Ferdinand about at the time, and actually Luther Blissett, who's our fantastic ambassador for all things Watford, in Watford, is about actually we seem to be having this curve at the moment where racist abuse seems to be on the rise again. And I think it's really important that we we continue to watch out for this, but also people like me do put in, as was pointed out, I think by Gilroy earlier, the need to look at legislation and look at how do we tackle these things head on. And I'm pleased to say as part of that work that I'm doing my best to do that. I think there's some other points that I just wanted to make as well in terms of roles that I have. I'm on the Joint Committee on Human Rights, and we did quite a full-on report last year actually about racism and about, in particular actually about Black Lives Matter. So if you get a chance to look at that report that we did last year, I know that was taken very seriously. And I'm also on the Health and Social Care Select Committee. And over the past year and a half, we very much focused on COVID, but we did a lessons learned report just recently. And I was one of the people who on the committee was very much pushing to make sure we looked at the higher impact of COVID on communities within the, I know there was conversation earlier about using the BAME phrase, and perhaps we should use BEAM more so, but, you know, looking at the impact on community. I can see Ruth there, I think, waving, you know, about how do we tackle this and how do we do a lot more to understand the mechanisms, not just in terms of COVID itself, but the reasons why that was the case, why it impacted people from BAME backgrounds more specifically. And with regards that in the lessons learned report, again, I won't get you to read too many things, but you'll find we did go into that in quite a lot of detail in terms of the evidence and lessons that we should be learning moving forward in terms of improving better outcomes. The other thing that I did want to say actually, and it was something that hasn't really been touched upon, but I'll mention it because it's a bit of a curveball for the conversation, but I'm very conscious of technology and things like artificial intelligence. And I've had a great concern that if we don't tackle potential prejudice and bias within technologies now, we're going to be creating more issues in the future. I wrote an article for The Guardian just a few, well, I think it was back in August, about my concerns that artificial intelligence, as it's coded, if we don't test enough people from diverse backgrounds, then the outcomes of artificial intelligence over the coming years, especially decades, may have baked into them a bias. That's often because these systems and these tools are built for everything from legal development, but also looking at health outcomes. I'm the chair of the Digital Health All-Party Parliamentary Group, and we've been looking very closely at the risks of not getting diversity right in the technology we use, because the risk is as we look forward, the diagnoses of particular health outcomes and issues may not be clear in the technology because they haven't tested them properly now or built them properly now. There is someone on this call who told me a very powerful story. I won't mention them unless they want to raise their hands, but it was a very prominent speaker about an awful situation where they were using a particular technology, very advanced bit of technology, and it was supposed to track their eyes, and it didn't track their eyes because they were Black. That just seems absurd in the modern world. So there's a lot that I think, along with legislation, along with looking how we look culturally, but also how we look forward, not just for the next 6 months or a year, but how we look forward about how technology, how bias appears across permeates all parts of society, and how we improve on that. So I'll just finish off with just one final comment, if I can. One Vision, I'm a trustee for them, very proud to be, and I don't think I would have understood quite as much about the challenges and also the brilliant community we have across Watford if it hadn't been for Enoch and the team, and for Harjit and so on. And of course, with One Vision being, One Voice being very much a firm part of that. But what I would say is I have an open door as best I can. Obviously, we had a awful situation with the horrific murder of my colleague, Sir David Anus, just a week or two ago, because of with his surgeries. But what I want to plea to you is that please don't see me as remote, as sitting in an ivory tower because I'm an MP. I want to listen, I want to work, and I want to make sure that as a community, we're the strongest we can possibly be across Watford, and be a beacon of hope to the rest of the country. Because one thing that's really come through in Watford is the powerful interfaith community we have, the powerful community we have across all backgrounds, but at the heart of it, it's that we're one town. And I think if we look at it that way moving forward, then the problems of racism aren't just limited to those who aren't white, but actually it's all of our job to solve that, all of our job to make it right, but also all of our jobs to make sure that our next generation of children and grandchildren, as was mentioned earlier, don't have this as something that they read in the history books, not something that they live and breathe in the playground. So thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for indulging me to speak, and thank you for everything you all do. And I look forward to working with you all as we go through this over what will no doubt be many months and hopefully decades to, well, not hopefully decades, but definitely decades to fix sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Dean Russell, MP. Good to see you again as well. We are nearing the end, but still to come, we have gospel singer Paul Lee and his wonderful dulcet tones. But it's my pleasure to introduce Peter Taylor, who is the elected Mayor of Watford. Peter, welcome along. Could you please share with us your thoughts about Black History Month?
Yeah, thank you very much, Miles. It's great to join you this evening. And just to pick up the point that Dean finished on, actually, about the diversity of Watford. Watford is the most diverse town in Hertfordshire, but also, perhaps related, the happiest place in the whole of the East of England, according to the East of England. So I'd like to welcome virtually everyone who's not a Watford resident to the event this evening. I will be brief because I know you've had lots of speakers this evening, and we've been going for over 2 hours. So I will be brief, and I'm a politician, so you can trust me to stick to that pledge. But the question is, what does Black History Month mean to you? And to me, it's a time to celebrate, to reflect, and to learn. And I think this evening's event's been a really great one to learn. I was really interested in Esther's talk about BEAM, and I don't use BAME anymore. I'm very happy to use BEAM, and I think a really positive term. Gilroy Brown talked about there's still work to be done, and I'm conscious that as the leader of the council in Watford, it's very easy that when people are critical to kind of, to put some barriers up and become quite defensive, but it is important to listen and to reflect and to think about how we can improve. Diversity is important, as he so eloquently made the point. And actually, if we look at the councils in Watford, we have become more diverse, but there's still certainly work to do there. And then Razwan talked about the role of schools. I used to be a teacher, and I completely agree with him about the importance of role models and of history and the stories that we tell in all subjects. I was really actually shocked by Sharon's experience and in nursing, and just, I think, the remarkable response that she gave to that situation. I just want to talk about two things in particular. So COVID, first of all. I know that lots of us have worked really closely with the NHS, and one of the things that does strike me about Watford General is the diversity of the staff there and the incredible response that they've and the support that they've provided to the town over the last 18 months in particular, and people from all walks of life and all nationalities and backgrounds playing their part in that. And the other thing that I was struck by today was that I am a patron, very proud patron of One Vision, along with Luther Blissett and several of the people on this call this evening. Exactly a week ago, we were in the Watford Coliseum, and the reason we were there was that Luther Blissett was being given the freedom of the borough. And it was 16 years since we gave someone the freedom of the borough. And Luther Blissett was certainly very, very deserving of that. He is Watford's all-time top goal scorer with 186 goals, over 500 appearances, a hat-trick for England on his debut, but loads and loads of community work and work tackling racism and being very eloquent on that subject. And I thought it was really appropriate for him to receive the freedom of the borough last week. He was disappointed to discover that he can't walk his sheep down the high street, but we did give him a very large teddy of a sheep that he can take wherever he pleases. But he is a really positive role model. I think Dean mentioned him, somebody who has achieved a huge amount professionally, but gone on and contributed massively to the community. And one of the things that, I always look at league tables and how Watford's doing, and obviously after an amazing 5-2 victory on Saturday's moved up the Premier League. But the one of the league tables that's actually looked at is the level of unity in towns? How do towns respond to their diversity? And I was really encouraged when Hope Not Hate highlighted that Watford is actually a relatively united town. And a lot of that is down to people like Luther, and also the Watford Interfaith Association, One Vision and One Voice, and the community groups in our town that constantly work hard to bring our town together, and so that we do listen to each other, we do share each other's successes and disappointments. And so it's been a real pleasure to join you this evening. I said I would be brief. I'm going to stick to my word, and thank you again for allowing me to be part of this event.
Well, thank you, Peter. You certainly made me beam. Harjeet Singh is the Chair of Trustees of One Vision and Deputy Lieutenant of Hertfordshire, and will now lead us in a vote of thanks. Harjeet.
Thank you, Miles. Just want to say a great thank you to you as well for hosting today and being our MC. It's been a pleasure to hear such a vast array of speakers that we've had today from different backgrounds. And I think the common theme is the fact that we are one as people, and how we go forward and how do we celebrate our communities. Also, I just want to touch upon what Sharon sort of talked about courage, celebrate and change. So understanding the past, the present and the future, which is important for us to recognize. But I know Peter's gone through some of the array of speakers that we've had, and also a big thank you to Dean for coming on today, and also sharing his working with the community, and also a big thank you to Peter as well for actually being a patron of One Vision, and just want to sort of take it to the fact that what we try and do here at One Vision is bringing people together. It's important. And today, the topic was, what does it mean to you? And I think that's important because many of us have been part of Black History Month for the last couple of weeks with different organizations, different groups. And I think the key essence is that we need to actually have these kind of events to understand our communities and to build strength and also resilience as well, because racism hasn't gone away, as we know, as the experiences that we've had through George Floyd, and also the COVID experience as well. So, but I do want to emphasize that here in Watford as well, like our guest speakers have alluded to, that Watford is one of these places that can bring people together, and One Vision has that notion through one voice of bringing communities together. So I just want to say once again, thank you to everyone that's come here today. I want to thank all the people working behind the scenes, people like Lucas as well, who's actually been hosting the actual whole event for us behind the scenes as well. Also, a big thank you to Lionel as well, because I've had the pleasure of listening to Lionel for the last couple of weeks in different arenas. And again, Lionel, I just want to say thank you. It's always a pleasure. And it seems like it's the first time I'm hearing you. So again, a big thank you to Lionel there as well. So can I pass it back to yourselves, Miles, and for you to end the actual event today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Harjeet. And may I too add my thanks to all of our speakers, and indeed all of those watching, and everybody for joining us on this very special commemoration. And I hope that you've been inspired and challenged, and that we may have helped you in some way celebrate Black History Month in a meaningful manner. My last job is to conclude in this very special way, and final word of motivation goes to our very own highly gifted and renowned gospel singer Paul Lee, as he sings Fast and Pray in this closing video.
forsake all around me, then tell me, why do I pray? And if I don't have the words of conviction, then tell me, what do I say? Oh yeah, I cannot stay much longer on a road that will lead me to pain. Oh, I can but grow much stronger. My reward as I pass through the rain, fast and pray. When I stumble and falter, hold me, help me, renew my faith. Whoa, yeah. My path is so much clearer when I wholly rely on your grace. Whoa, I now can't stand much longer. How I long to see you face to face, fast and pray, fast and pray, do it today. Oh, I gotta fast and pray. Love, joy, and peace are the fruits of the Spirit. You must fast and pray on God's words, and you will stand on that day. Oh yeah. Communication. Fast and pray. Talk to me. I gotta do it today. Oh, I gotta fast and pray. Speak to me. Fast and pray. Oh, communication. Fast and pray. Talk to me. I gotta do it today. Fast and pray. Speak to me. I'm down on my knees. Lord, meet my needs. Give me a word for today to help me on my way. I'm down on my knees. Lord, meet my needs. Speak to me. I'm down on my knees. Lord, meet my needs. Give me a word for today to help me on my way. Down on my knees. Lord, meet my needs. Hey.
And Pray by gospel singer Paul Lee. And I'm sure you'll agree this evening was indeed time well spent. Thank you and good night to you all.
Finish.